Okay.
Hi, I'm Walt Ruffier, Executive Director of the Generator here at Congdon Yards, and you're watching A Student's Perspective.
Hi there, and thanks for tuning in to A Student's Perspective, the weekly series that connects students with designers, manufacturers, educators, industry professionals, and design media celebrities to hear their stories on just how they've gotten to where they are now. Through our conversations, we connect the past, present, and future of design to show just how much we can learn from each other to grow towards our fullest potential without prescribed limitations. Think of A Student's Perspective as a weekly design lecture series from the student's point of view. A Student's Perspective is a division of the nonprofit University Hall of Innovation, whose goals are to connect students with the design industry through design challenges and mentorship, and a collaboration with the Marywood University Interior Architecture Program in Scranton, Pennsylvania. All interviews can be found in their video format at www.astudentsperspective.tv. For more information or sponsorship inquiries, please contact universityhallofinnovation@gmail.com.
So hello, today we are at the 2022 High Point Market in High Point, North Carolina, and we are with the Executive Director of the Generator, and I am Katie.
I'm Courtney.
And would you just like to start us off by introducing yourself and giving us a little bit about your background?
I was born and raised in Rochester, New York, and been up there up until about 2.5 years ago. My career has been all in the metalworking industry, and I've done pretty much everything there is to do in that. And when we moved down here, it was a little difficult at first to find work, but this opportunity came up, and I've been a lifetime woodworker. So this kind of brought both halves of that together, and it's been a good match.
Good. So can you just give a little bit of an introduction as to what the Generator is for those that are listening?
Sure. Yeah, the Generator is an initiative of Business High Point in partnership with Scm Woodworking Technologies. And our goal is to try to bring this level of technology to the small and mid-sized furniture companies who either can't afford to buy this kind of equipment or can't really keep it busy, don't have enough work to keep it busy. So they can expand their designs, they can expand their offerings just by bringing the parts they can't make themselves to us, and we can do those for them. And we also are trying to help. It's very difficult to get prototypes made for the designers, furniture designers or interior designers, to get a custom piece made. Sometimes it's hard to get done. So we also try to fill that niche.
Very nice.
So what was it like transitioning from your past experience with metalwork and woodworking into what you're doing right now?
It was pretty easy, actually, because I'm used to this level of equipment, and I've done my time as a programmer, so learning the particular software for each of these machines was no big deal. And I'm familiar with wood, and cutting is cutting, so whether it's metal or wood or plastic or what have you, it's all just kind of a variation on the same thing.
I was going to ask, how did you get started in woodworking? You said it was kind of a lifetime that you worked with. So how did you get into woodworking?
Well, I actually started in high school. I don't know if they still even have it in high school, but they had woodshop. It was one of the electives for in the higher grades. And so I took that and just kind of fell in love with it. So I actually built an electric guitar in woodshop.
Oh, really? That's so cool.
Wow.
Just the body part.
Yes.
So,
Great. So what was the capabilities like, or I should say, what are the capabilities like for the local community as well as maybe anywhere else in the world that are anyone that's looking to come gain this resource that's available at this point?
Oh, it's very easy. Actually, if you're here or anywhere close by and can travel, it's always nice to meet somebody face to face so that you can go over their design. And I always tell people you can bring me anything from a 3D model to a pencil sketch on a napkin, and if that's all you have, we'll help you flesh it out and get it to the point where we can import it into the machines. For anybody that's not close, they can just contact me directly and send me the details on their project, and we can just go from there. And anybody that wants to have something done can come. You don't have to be a business.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's an individual who built a table in his garage and just needs it sanded, they're welcome to bring it down and we'll do it for them.
Yeah, so it's really like a collaborative environment, I feel like, from what you're saying. It's, anybody can really come in and have an idea. And do they work specifically with you? Do you flesh out the ideas with them, or just kind of see what they're looking for and then kind of be that backbone as to how, okay, we're going to use this machinery, we're going to use that, or maybe give a suggestion here or there? What does that look like?
Well, that's something that I do directly, because part of my experience, my previous experience, was in design for manufacturing.
Okay.
So when somebody brings me their idea, it's their design, but it doesn't necessarily adapt well to being made. So we can make those changes. We can go back and forth with them on their design to get it to the point where it's manufacturable. At that point, I already know what machines it's going to go through, so I can work up pricing for them for one piece or 100.
How many different, I don't know really how to ask this question. How many individuals or companies come in and ask for your help to create these pieces? Do you have maybe a number of how many come in each month or each year?
Well, we've only been open for less than a year.
Oh, okay.
We opened officially last market.
Yeah.
So in that time, and slightly before it, we've probably got 20 different clients, individuals or companies that we currently have done work for, or are in the middle of doing work for.
Very nice. And with that said, was there a realization that there was a need for this specific resource within the community, and then it kind of just developed from there? Or, was it just the start of an idea that said, oh, well, High Point with the market, the capabilities surrounding that in this area, was that something how was that like?
Well, when they were initially planning this building renovation, and it's managed by the Chamber, by the Business High Point Chamber of Commerce, they had, as part of a workforce development, an idea to put a makerspace somewhere in here where people can come and use the equipment. And when word got out, a couple of young gentlemen, Justin Stabb and Taylor West. Taylor is a furniture designer, and Justin owns his own business doing custom millwork and more. They had the idea to up that and put in commercial equipment, and instead of tailoring it toward the individual, tailor it toward building or businesses. So that was the initial idea to create the generator. And they actually went out and found SCM and brokered a deal with SCM to supply the equipment for it. So that's where the partnership started. And we all thought that it would be a great idea. And as soon as we were open, even our soft opening, as soon as we started getting inundated with work. So we're in the middle of an expansion right now. So we're going to a second location and putting additional equipment in there to help with the throughput.
Yeah. Where is that second location? Do you know?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
Exactly. It's disclosed.
Yeah.
It's a disclosed location.
I'm just not sure where the building is. It's only about 5 minutes away.
Oh, okay.
But I've only been there once.
Now, is it a larger location, a smaller one for more, circulation?
We will be leasing like about 25,000 square feet.
Okay.
This here is 6.
Okay.
So it's much larger and will be more conducive to production style machining. So.
Yeah. Right. So maybe since with the the closer location, maybe just an extension off of the original.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we'll try to keep the high volume stuff over there.
Yeah.
And we'll do the low volume prototype one-offs here.
Great. So with that being said, can you just kind of backtrack and explain maybe what machinery you specifically have within the generator and maybe how you came to realize that those were the specific machines that you wanted to incorporate?
Okay. As far as what I wanted to incorporate, SCM offered this list of equipment, and they did that before I was even part of the team here. So, but I'm very happy with what they did offer because it's awesome. So what we have is there's one 3-axis router, and I don't know if you know what that is, but it's got a tool that sticks straight down, and it goes back and forth, in and out, and up and down. Those are the 3 axes. Then we have a 5-axis router, which does everything the first one does, except it'll also tilt that tool and rotate it. So between those two features, you can get to anywhere, pretty much anywhere on a part and machine it. So you can do true 3D parts on there. And you can actually pass it from one set of clamps to another, so you can machine it all the way around. Then we have a case clamp for clamping up case goods, cabinets, bookshelves, that sort of thing. We have a bore and dowel machine, which is used for putting dowels in the edge of parts so that it can match up to holes in the side of parts when you put it together. We have a wide belt sander that's 52 inches wide and has a veneer setting where it just barely touches the material, or a hardwood setting where it takes up to 30 thousandths of material off at a time. Then we have a couple of classic machines, a jointer, 20-inch wide jointer, a 24-inch wide planer, table saw, sliding table saw, and another 5-axis router that I haven't been fully trained on yet, so I can't use it yet. But it's different from the first one in that it has a much higher Z-axis, so you could carve a statue in there if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And let's see, the only thing left is the beam saw, which is a workhorse for us. Its primary purpose is to break down sheet goods. You tell it what size sheet you're putting in and what size parts you want it to finish up in, and it decides the best way to do that with the minimum waste. And then and shows you a picture of how to load the sheet. So you just put it in there and let it go.
Wow, so that seems like there's so many capabilities and opportunities for what can be produced within the generator itself.
Pretty much. I mean, within the confines of the size of the machines, and they're pretty large machines, we can do pretty much anything.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's any limitations with that, or has there been a project so far that has come in that you said maybe we don't have those capabilities for doing it?
The one thing, there's a couple minor pieces of equipment that I want to augment, but the one thing we can't do at all right now is turning. So round pieces, table legs, things like that, we can't do right now. So that's something that's on my radar. I want to get a CNC turning center where you can pretty much do anything.
Yeah. And with the extra space, you'll have room for the new machines.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. So something that you stated, which I find really interesting, is just the idea of, I guess, maybe that lack of that circulation that you're trying to turn, the objects and then kind of finish out that product. But I feel like, it sparks the idea that, digital fabrication maybe can't do everything. Can you just talk about maybe your position on that? Do you feel like digital fabrication should go from start to finish in completing that entire product, or do you feel like the digital fabrication technologies only go so far, or that they maybe should be utilized for only specific things, and then maybe by hand finishing out that product?
Well, it's kind of an interesting dichotomy for me, because I started out as a tool maker where your skill is in your hands and you are a craftsman. And in my woodworking at home, I was very limited as to what equipment I had. So again, it was the skill that you possess for yourself. But with today's technology, we have the ability to take that skill that used to exist in only a few people and import it into a piece of CNC equipment. As long as somebody with imagination and skill on the programming end of things is involved in it, you can pretty much duplicate anything. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to replace, the craftsman, because we're not. There's always going to be a place for someone like that. And some people just want things that are handmade. And I get that. For me personally, I like things to be clean and smooth and finished, and I don't want them to look handmade. So this is perfect. I mean, with the right equipment, and like I said, we're only lacking a little bit. You can do anything. Our first order here was a chair for Dunbar Furniture, and the original was built in 1942, I think, by Amish craftsmen. So it was handmade. All of it was handmade, and we were able to reproduce it. Every piece of joinery on it, and every joint, every edge was identical to the first one. And we made 90 of them, and the 90th one was exactly the same as the first, which the Amish craftsmen cannot do.
Yeah, it is a really interesting situation, I feel, because, something that I was going to bring up was the question of, do you think that the craftsman would go away? And I would honestly agree with you. I think that there's always going to be a need for that craftsman. But also, you brought up a really interesting point that, depending upon the product that you're looking to gain, and how much of that, that definitely kind of determines the output of the technology that you're going to use. If you want 100 pieces that look exactly the same, you are going to go more towards digital fabrication technology to make that happen, because you want to make sure that every piece is the same and everybody's getting the same exact quality and product and all of that. But if on the flip side, if it's someone like you said that likes that handmade characteristic value to it, knowing that that person put all their time and energy into that one piece, and a little bit of characteristic quality flex within that, one might not look as similar as the other, so then you're getting a really special piece. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that process?
Well, that's very true. I mean, some people want the one and only of something, and I get that. It's nice to have that. You're going to pay a lot of money for it. And I mean, I've seen some handmade furniture that I absolutely adore, and it would take a lot for me to replicate it. So if somebody wanted one, it wouldn't be worth it for me to replicate it, but because by the time I got everything programmed and everything worked out, it would cost more than the handmade one. But if somebody wanted 100 of them, then, or even 20, then it's much more doable.
And probably more efficient too, because making even 10 or like a lesser amount, you can spit them out quicker and kind of make that and then go directly.
That's one of the groups we're trying to help is the craftsman who makes custom pieces or close to custom pieces, and he might have a chair that took him 4 weeks to make, and somebody sees it and loves it and wants a dozen of them. Well, that's a year's worth of work.
Yeah.
And who wants to wait a year for their chairs? So.
Yeah. we are in this kind of fast-paced society where people want things like as soon as possible. So
instant
even
gratification.
yeah, exactly. So so you talked a little bit about the benefits of the local community. What has that experience been like? Have you felt that, the generator being in its location, has that strictly kind of just benefited more of the local community, or do you feel like there's more people outsourcing this from out of the area?
Right now, it's primarily benefiting the local because we haven't advertised at all. So everything is word of mouth. And I mean, at times we've been 3 months, or had 3 months backlog on our schedule. So we've been quite busy. It's kind of evening out a little bit now, especially with the expansion, will be even better. But I imagine once we do start advertising that we're going to again be inundated. But we've had people from, they had a show by creators, or for creators, a contest for innovation, and it was right next door. So they had the people, some of them wandered over and saw what we were doing, and one of them actually contracted us to build a piece for her that we did. We've had people from as far away as Italy hear about us.
Wow.
And I don't know how they heard about us, but they did. And actually came through to see what we could do. And we haven't made anything for them yet, but I'm hopeful that we can.
Yeah. So I guess right now, if somebody wanted to find the generator and utilize that capability of the machinery of the service, how would they go about to getting in contact with you? Is there a website that they can kind of look and see what the process is, or is it just kind of a happenstance, word of mouth, like you were saying, coming into the shop? Or even what does it look like, I guess, for the person out of the area trying to gain this service?
Well, Congdon Yards has a website. I don't think the generator has one yet. I believe that's in the works. But they can find the contact info. There is a section about the generator on the Congdon Yards. And if they wanted to get in contact, there's information there for them to do it. Most of the people have just heard it from somebody. And a lot of the local businesses are aware of us. So if somebody comes in and says, gee, I wish I had some place I could take this to get it done, then they have directed them to us. So that has worked out quite well.
Could you tell us about what kind of products that are made in the generator, or like what are typically asked for when being ordered?
Sure. There's been a couple of prototypes we've done for a local designer. They were tables, kind of look like a coffee table, end table kind of thing. We've done a lot of chairs. Chairs are deceptively complicated. There's a lot of complex geometry in a chair, and it makes them difficult to make in traditional methods, especially if you want to use nice joinery, nice strong joinery. So we've gotten done a lot of work on those. Right now, we are running some parts for middle school kids. They're coming to visit actually tomorrow, and we gave them each a piece of paper with a rectangle in it and said, you draw something in there, primarily an outline, but some of them put a lot of detail in there too. So we're actually making those parts for them, so when they come tomorrow they can get a piece made to their drawing. So those are kind of neat. There's a lot of interesting designs.
So with that said, is there an openness to bringing in student culture within the generator, kind of like opening it up to all ages and ranges from student work, maybe within school, maybe if somebody doesn't have the capabilities of a workshop, for example, within their school district or whatnot, and they want to kind of outsource and use these facilities, are they able to do so? Is there an age range that you would like to typically work with, just because of maybe the safety hazards or whatnot?
This is the first school group that we've brought, or that we're working with. There is another one, I believe, that is going to be coming in. You met Robin. She is actually overseeing that end of, bringing school kids in, and because we'd like to show them at an early age that a wood shop doesn't have to be dirty and grimy and up to your waist in sawdust and covered in grease the rest of the way. It just doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
And not every kid is made to go to school, or college. Some of them are just not made for that. And there still are ways for people to make a good living without going to college. And there's a shortage, probably across the world, but at least in our country, in the skilled trades for people, because everybody was told to go to college. And,
Sometimes you think that maybe in this environment of working, actually physically building, like seeing how the process is from start to finish, it's a little bit more like rewarding or knowledgeable. You feel like you are at the end of it because you have put all of, like I said, your time and energy into that one piece. You know when things are going to fail, or you can at least see and acknowledge why those things are failing. I think, because it's interesting, going to school, it's so easy to say, I'm going to make this thing. But once you kind of go to actually make it, it doesn't exactly work out the way that you anticipate it to. So, for example, that's why I was asking before what are the capabilities of the machinery, because, if somebody's going to bring this in, maybe, you would step in and say, that's not really going to work. Maybe you would have to do it by hand, or maybe give a suggestion as to, well, if you want to do it this way, then you're probably going to have to tailor it, kind of give up some part of the design to fulfilling that kind of desire, I guess.
Oh yeah, somebody just recently contacted me. They were designed a kid's game I only got a photograph of some of the parts, but they're like animal shapes. And to look at them, we couldn't duplicate it exactly because it was made by hand. It has sharp internal corners, which we can't do. But we could redesign it a little bit and then be able to mass produce it. So that exists. But yeah, I mean, if you compare working in a trade to going to college, at the end of 4 years of college, you've got a big pile of debt. If you've been working for those 4 years, you've got a big pile of money.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of dynamic that occurs. And it's a big choice,
Yeah.
So, like you said, not everybody desires to do one versus the other. So it's good to have a little bit more of an option as to what the future looks like. And I feel like, as digital fabrication and technology kind of evolves, there's more of an openness for it. And the conversation kind of is no longer just, you have to do this or you should do this versus that, So I guess with that said, what does the process look like when somebody I know you said if somebody is interested in kind of using the service, they come in with either a photograph or as much detail as they want, whether it's a sketch, a photograph, or whatnot. Then what does that process look like after it's done? Is it kind of handed off to you and then you take the reins on kind of putting it into a software that kind of spits it into the technology, the machinery, or do the clients kind of fulfill that process and kind of work to understand each moment that occurs through that?
Well, we work together with them. There are parts of their design that are not quite manufacturable or would be easier if we did something a little bit different. We will work with them. I'll talk to them. If they're open to that, I can model that up and show it to them so that they can see in actual what it would look like instead of just, in their head. So it goes back and forth like that. It might go back and forth 20 times if we're having trouble kind of tying it down. But most people tell me what they want. I suggest the changes that I think might be beneficial, and they say okay. And then I model it, show them the model, and they said, yeah, that looks great. So, then we can go directly into the machining software.
Yeah. And you said earlier that you had previous experience and knowledge with working with woodworking and metalwork. Now, is the primary material here used in the generator wood specifically, or can you incorporate more plastics or metal into it?
The machines are made for wood and or plastic. So most plastics we can cut just as well as wood. Anything that's harder than plastic, the machines aren't quite rigid enough for that. When you get into metals, everything is much bigger and heavier and more solid. So, that is another area we might be delving into, is trying to expand our offerings into metalworking as well. Sheet metal or regular machining of metal. With sheet metal, you can use laser cutters and press brakes to bend it up into whatever.
I was, kind of interested because, previously I had read kind of an article about digital fabrication and how it can be used as more of a connection between the past and the present. So, for example, maybe something was destroyed, and now they're starting to utilize digital fabrication as kind of the corrector as to finish that piece. So for example, if a vase is kind of broken, you have now this artifact that, using digital technologies and fabrication, they're using 3D printers, laser cutters, whatever the need is to kind of create that piece that finishes it once again. So they're kind of highlighting that idea. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that maybe that could be used as the future for digital technology? Or where do you see even that evolving? Maybe specifically within the generator, or it doesn't have to be connected at all? I'm just curious as to your thoughts.
Well, I think 3D printing it's got a wide open future. I wouldn't say every day, but every year at least, they're coming out with machines that use different materials. Yeah. They have some now that'll work with carbon fibers. They have some that'll work with metals. So, pretty soon you're going to be able to print anything you want. And it may not be perfect. It may not be exactly what somebody, handmade, just like the woodworking isn't. Yeah. But it will be nice and it will be serviceable.
Yeah. It's really interesting too, because I think, more recently people are starting to, like I said, understand that, it's not just one versus the other anymore. But maybe more so, do you think that digital fabrication and technology is starting to overwhelm the idea of that, original craftsman? I know we talked a little bit about how we don't think it's ever going to go away, in our opinions, but do you think that there's going to be a point where digital fabrication starts to kind of overpower it more so? I'm just thinking because right now, since it is so new and fresh, the technology is here and the techniques, maybe it's kind of just the situation of the era that we're in. Do you think it'll ever kind of level out?
I think it will level out. The thing about technology is it's always changing and it's always moving and it's always going forward. The old methods, the traditional methods of doing things are kind of stagnant. They are to the level where they can go. You can't really go much farther than that. Because even the people who have developed a lifetime of skill, there's only so much of that skill that you can impart to another person. And then they have to spend that time to develop the skills. And there will always be a need for that. As a skilled tradesman, I don't think that'll ever go away. So I think the two of them do complement each other. I don't think it's going to be one or the other.
It's just an interesting idea, I think, because, more often than not, I feel like when I was first introduced to schooling and architecture and everything that, kind of goes through that, furniture, product design, whatnot, you kind of are first introduced to the wood shop. And then as you start to learn these new technologies, you start to forget the old ones. So that's why I'm just curious as to how, you might feel that evolve kind of process is undergone. But how do you feel, or what do you feel the future of the generator will look like? Do you think that you're going to be incorporating more technologies? If so, which ones are you interested in bringing in? You mentioned a little bit earlier the laser cutters, or maybe 3D printing or something, just to kind of open up the doors a little bit more to new materials, new technologies.
Oh yeah, we would like to incorporate as many different aspects and materials as we can. So, it all depends on the funding we're able to get. Right now, we are trying to get the generator to a point where it's self-sustaining, and we're very close to that. So that as we move forward and expand, that we'll be able to just bring things on and develop them until they also are self-sustaining. And being part of the chamber, it's not like we're in it to make money. That's not our main goal. Our main goal is to help businesses and individuals. So in branching out into the different materials and different aspects of things, I think we'll always be growing to a certain extent.
And what materials specifically do you think are, I guess, I know that probably more typically wood is utilized for, these sort of technologies, but do you think that there's a material that people have been lacking in using and maybe should use more? Because I know I've had primary experience working with wood, but then just recently I've kind of had the idea of utilizing plastics within the CNC or foam or something. Do you feel like there's more of a materiality that can be diverted and utilized more, or do you hope to see, the community using something a little bit more interestingly? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's an unlimited amount of combinations you can come up with, and if you're making artistic pieces or one-of-a-kind things or very low value, it's more suited to that because you can kind of play with it a little bit, and you don't have to worry so much about how is this going to perform for 100 years, because it's not really meant to be used like traditional furniture. They're more of an artistic thing, and you can like I said, there's an unlimited amount, and as the technology grows, especially in the 3D printing area, you're going to find more and more different materials that are being able to be printed. So that's gonna help a lot. Even if you make a wooden part and your joints are all made out of something else, carbon fiber, for instance, or some type of plastic, or even metal. If you want to machine a joint that each side of the joint connects to a piece of wood or a piece of plastic or something like that. It's almost unlimited.
Yeah.
It's limited by your imagination, anyway.
That's really interesting. So you kind of spoke a little bit on something that made me think of, my next kind of divergence into the conversation, but you spoke saying that, maybe some pieces are made out of wood and then some pieces are made out of plastic and then they're kind of put back together. Do you think that if you are going to be using the digital fabrication technologies within a project, do you think that all of the pieces should be kind of produced, or I guess should I say, do you think that the piece should be fully developed using digital fabrication? Or do you think that, if you are going to use that service, that you should just let the machine do all of the work, make it easier for yourself? Or do you think it is a combination of the both?
Well, I think everything is a combination of some sort. So it all depends on what the client wants. If they already have their design and they want this, and they want it made out of this, that's what I'm going to do. If they're open to suggestion and they want something that's a little different or a little more interesting, then we can explore those aspects.
Perfect. Well, I think that just brings us, as a conclusion to this conversation. Katie, do you want to kind of finish with our most famous question?
Our most famous question is, if you can go back and give advice to your younger or student self, knowing everything you know now, what would it be?
There's a lot of things in my misspent youth that I could change. I'm not sure.
It could be with, just your experience in anything, woodworking, metalwork, digital technology and fabrication, or it could just be general knowledge that you've kind of experienced.
Well, I'd probably tell myself to find the lady over there earlier than I did.
Yeah. So I guess that's all for this episode of A Student's Perspective. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and catch us next week as the conversation continues.
We hope you liked this discussion with the design industry from a student's perspective. Please like, share, and comment, and stay tuned for more inspiring conversations to come.